Well, hello everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. Hope you are well today and excited because today is Christmas Eve. So hopefully you have some exciting preparations on the way. And I thought, I had to take a moment and offer you my own Christmas gift, which is this video. So today we ought to have been, talking about something really positive, but I decided that the first idea that came to mind was going to be the pick, and that idea is not necessarily one that's super positive in concept. It's the one about, what can lead INFJs, not to get on. As in, if you're an INFJ and you meet another INFJ, why is it not guaranteed that you actually will get on, all right? I think that there's different ways to approach this and might help people. Sometimes don't get why, they're not really on the same wavelength as other INFJs, might lead them to ask themselves, am I really an INFJ? Or, things like that might lead to some sort of personal doubt or questionings. And so I'm happy to sort of share the fruits, my experience systematized in order to be presentable in this short discussion. Now, just before I move on, if you haven't got this for Christmas yet, get my book on the INFJ, The Ecstatic Soul. It's less than $10, link is below. Deepest investigation of the type, as yet. Came out 2 years ago, hopefully a next book to come out next year. And if you are really in a Ren mood for Christmas, you can also get The Infinite Castle, my new novel. Get a copy, less than €10. Really supports the channel. Rumor has it the main character is an INFJ. If you like Dostoevsky, Kafka, existentialism, modernism, magical realism, weird stuff, this might just be for you. And, I have a Patreon page that you can support as well. Link is below. Really supports the channel. Thank you so much to my supporters. So, of course, there are situations in life where we will come across INFJs, if we ourselves are INFJs, that we don't get on with, all right? And we might want to try to rationalize why we don't get on with these people, because there's always an extra, if you like, weight of meaning that comes with coming across or interacting with a person whom we know to be INFJ, right? And therefore, not getting on with these people, or not finding that we have much to say to these people, not wanting to necessarily hang out with these people, whether online or offline, might lead us to just question things, whether about ourselves or about the other, about the world. Might lead to states of, thoughtfulness or potentially overthinking that are sometimes not for the best. And often, if we dig a little bit deep, we'll realize that there might be reasons why we're not getting on with that particular person. So I've divided, 3 ways. I've divided the video into 3 ways you might not get on with an INFJ if you are an INFJ. So the way number 1 is, in some sense, the most obvious one. That is to say, you might not get on with an INFJ, if you're an INFJ, if in fact one of the 2 people is not an INFJ, or if neither is an INFJ, right? That is to say, you might think that you're an INFJ, but you're not, or assuming that, you're pretty convinced that you're an INFJ and you have very good grounds for thinking that you're an INFJ. The person actually might be the one who identifies as an INFJ, but is not an INFJ. So in this case, they are mistaken about their self-identification, their self-typing. And it happens a lot, right? Happens a hell of a lot. In other words, if you've been online, because, usually people who self-type as INFJ are people that you'll meet most likely online. Not necessarily, I've met people offline who identify as INFJ, who say they identify as INFJ in the workplace, I have met such people. In fact, sometimes they were mistyped. Sometimes they were well-typed, but more often mistyped. I even came across someone who was almost certainly an SFJ and who self-typed as ENTJ at work. Very cool guy, but, imagine the level of mistaken self-identification, and says a lot about identification of yourself through tests, and how that can really misfire. And it should be a word of warning, a lesson about the limits of the test, because these people would have taken primarily the test. Either way, online you'll come across a lot of people who identify as INFJ, and you'll notice you have very little liking for them. You don't really get them, you don't feel that you relate at all, most likely they're completely mistaken about their typing, right? Of course, it could also be you that is mistaken. But here we'll be charitable and assume that it's the other person. So never underestimate when you have some of these potentially soul-crushing exchanges with another INFJ, and you understand and you just are confused. Don't appreciate, or don't misappreciate or underappreciate, maybe to speak more English, the possibility that that person's mistyped. Okay. Now, another possibility, which to be fair is also pretty common, it's almost as common as the first possibility, and is that one of the INFJs is unhealthy, or both are unhealthy. Now we know that an unhealthy INFJ is unlikely to behave as what we are expecting an INFJ to behave as. Some systems will emphasize the grip, that is to say, being in the grip of the inferior function, in which case an INFJ that is in the grip of the inferior function due to stress or other such events or processes might behave more like a sort of erratic ESTP, have the SE very much front and center, but not a stable or mature form of SE, something more infantile. So that can happen. You can meet an INFJ who is in an NITI looping mode, to say an INFJ who's very much investing in the inferior functions and not in the not in the inferior functions, but in the introverted functions, and often not channeling and devaluing the extroverted functions. There's a real issue with all introverted types in the community, whereby it's assumed that the introverted versions of every function, NI, SI, TI, and FI, supposedly they're all the deeper ones, they're all the more profound ones, at the expense of SE, FE, TE, and NE. And that's a real issue, because obviously that's completely ungrounded, and can lead to really unhealthy behaviors. And, alienation, as described in this book, for the INFJ is a very real mode of existence, and it's not going to be helped if you're in that mode. Now, INFJs who are in the grip, or who are looping NI and TI, or generally failing to appreciate or channel their extroverted functions. Now, just leaving aside the fact that sometimes it can be a really, genuine challenge for INFJs to do this. If you want to know how to tackle this challenge, again, get this book. But often they'll come across misanthropic and very solipsistic, and their world of reference is completely inner. It happens inside their own minds, and they don't refer back to the external world, to the outside world. So they will be solipsistic in this sense. They only check back against their internal world. They'll feel very alienated and disconnected. So delusional, often paranoid as well can happen, and they'll tend to be very stubborn about their own world of self-reference. Antagonistic, sometimes they veer into paranoia and conspiratorial theories. Unhealthy INFJs, actually, surprisingly or not, are very drawn to conspiracy theory. It's something I've observed. And finally, maybe one that is a bit less obvious, one cause that is a bit less obvious, but nonetheless still very much there. It's less obvious and probably less common, but it's there, is when, quite simply, the two INFJs are in fact INFJ, but they don't happen to have much in common. Vastly different cultural upbringings, vastly different social upbringing, social context. Maybe they work in totally different areas. If you add up those different variables, you're already adding up many sources of potential disconnect. There might be another one that is an important source of disconnect, is that if, in addition to one or more of these factors that I just described, one of the INFJs is actually not very interested in being an INFJ. That is to say, maybe you yourself are an INFJ, identify as an INFJ. The other person you have identified as an INFJ based on their behavior, or their mode of processing things. Or maybe they know they're INFJ just vaguely because they've been told, or they took the test once because they were asked to take it and somehow it came out accurate, because that can happen. But they don't really care about their self-identification. And this sheds a further light on the fact that INFJ types, INFJ people often, in the first instance, would tend to a priori relate to each other and find a sense of brotherhood and friendship with each other, want to create support network with each other, means that when that doesn't happen, and this video is about cases when that doesn't happen, there's an issue. It can be threatening existentially speaking. So let's find out the causes. In these cases, what we often leave unspoken is the fact that a big factor in these support networks and this sense of relating is that we're not just relating to other INFJs. We're relating to other people who have gone through the process of identifying as an INFJ. So you're reaching out to another person who's not just a person you think is INFJ. You're reaching to a person who consciously, deliberately, and motivationally self-identifies as an INFJ. And that significantly enhances the sense of resonance between different people. When someone doesn't care about being an INFJ, they lead their life, and it might be a very different life, culturally, socially, professionally, intellectually, academically, whatever, than your life, and I don't care that they're INFJ, maybe there won't be so much of a connection, and maybe that's okay. So these were the 3 ways an INFJ might not get on with another INFJ. Let me know if you think of other ways, because maybe you have experienced other ways, and maybe you have conceptualized such ways, and I want to hear your input. Enlighten me as well, okay? So enjoy your Christmas time, guys. Happy Christmas. And I will see you next week. It will still be December, okay? See you then. Take care.